Hey, everybody. Hope and pray that you're doing well today as we go to our word from the word. And today, that word is one. One. And so, as we're beginning off, this is Monday for most people that are watching this, unless you catch up at a later point. But there's a lot going on, right? This is June 1st. Man, we're already into June. That's hard to believe. But as we're looking around at everything that's going on in the world right now, with the pandemic worldwide, and then our nation here with tragedies that have happened recently, and all the protests and violence that's going along with it. And it's easy to look around. I even talked about this yesterday in our 11 o'clock worship, that it's easy to try to think that all that happened overnight, when really it was just one thing after another. These things all build on each other. It's very appropriate that they're also in the book of Ezekiel, as it's looking to Israel. Israel had gotten one step further away from God, it seemed like, each and every day. And just as the Israelites had looked to Solomon and were following his lead, as we talked about on Sunday, here we see that Ezekiel gets a message from the Lord that's basically a lamentation or a lament for the princes, as he calls them. He won't even call them kings, but he's talking about the leaders that they have, these ungodly leaders that they had. And so that's kind of what we're going to look at starting today, and then we'll see where it takes us this week. But Ezekiel chapter 19, he gives us two different comparisons. And two analogies, two comparisons. The first, verses 1 through 9, is dealing with a lioness and her cubs, and talking about that. And these, it's analogies and comparisons to real life kings who were only there on the scene for a short period of time before they were killed, and that ruled evilly. They ruled with evil in the sight of the Lord. Sometimes try to make up new words. That's okay. So as they were doing this, they ruled with evil in the sight of the Lord. They ended up in captivity and ended up dying there, these unruly kings. Now, that's verses 1 through 9, and then verses 10 through 14, which is what I'm going to read here for us now, is dealing with a vine. A vine. So Ezekiel chapter 19, starting in verse 10, the Bible says this: "Your mother was like a vine in your bloodline, planted by the waters, fruitful and full of branches because of many waters." Remember that, fruitful. Verse 11, "She had strong branches for scepters of rulers. She towered in stature above the thick branches, and was seen in her height amid the dense foliage. But she was plucked up in fury. She was cast down to the ground, and the east wind dried her fruit. Her strong branches were broken and withered. The fire consumed them, and now she is planted in the wilderness, in a dry and thirsty land. Fires come out from a rod of her branches and devoured her fruit, so that she has no strong branch, a scepter for ruling." This is a lamentation, and has become a lamentation. And that's a reference back to the beginning of the chapter. But to look at this, it's a representation of Israel and her kings. And the fact that even flourishing, being so fruitful, and this vine that was just thriving, was a picture of when Israel was under David and Solomon, under their godly rule. And we just talked about Sunday how in his latter days, as he began to take in all these wives and began to take in their culture and their religion, and he began to worship all these false gods, and he basically led the nation to their demise. Now, let's not let them skate off by not having any part of it. They too continued to play the harlot, and continued to be the adulterous wife, and continued to cheat on God. But now, here's where I wanted to draw the application for us today, and especially in light of everything that's going on in our nation right now. You know, it's very easy for us all to try to cast the blame everywhere we can. Typically, in anything, if we do something wrong, it's easy to blame other people. I've used this example before, but even kids, they do this it's almost as instinct as, well, what happened? Well, he did it or she did it, and unless you're an only child, there's always somebody else to blame, right? If there's a dog or a cat or some animal, hey, you blame it on them. And so now you kind of feel our struggle with 6 kids. It was always somebody to blame, right? But to think about this is the same way that Israel would do. And it's easy to cast the blame. And don't take me wrong, because here God is essentially saying that, look, these leaders are responsible as well. They have a responsibility on their shoulders, and they led in the wrong way. And we see this throughout Israel's history. They had some godly kings, and they had some very ungodly kings. We have some that start right and end wrong. Some that start wrong, end right. It just all depends. And it depends on their relationship with God. But in light of everything that's going on for us today, it's easy for us to say that all hope is lost. Even in looking at the beginning of the chapter, talking about the lioness, and there again, I encourage you to read the whole chapter, that she would even feel like all hope was lost. And see, repeatedly, this is the theme of Israel, that they, in their sin, and then they lose hope because God has allowed, or they'll blame God, say God has caused it to happen, but God caused it because of their disobedience. God allowed it to the Babylonians to take them into captivity because of their sin. So it was still their fault, but they were blaming everybody else. And today it's very easy for us to blame everybody else. Yes, our leaders have to take responsibility, but ultimately it's still the people's fault that put them there. Right? And it's still, and you say, well, no, I didn't vote for that person. Well, that's fine. Probably the other person probably might not have been much better. I mean, regardless. And this is talking about in any generation, in any rulers over this nation or any others across the world. Somebody's going to be happy with what they're doing. Somebody's going to be very upset with what they're doing. And yes, they have responsibility on their shoulders. But the point is this. Okay, I don't want you to miss this, because we can get bogged down with all the news and with all the headlines and with all the hype and with all the politics, and we can get hung up on all of that. Here's what I need you to understand today. You realize that here is talking about a lion and a vine. Do you realize that Jesus is called the Lion of the tribe of Judah? That the descendants of David, that he was the rightful Messiah, but called the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Because see, even as this lioness was trying to get these cubs and raise them up to do what they were supposed to do, there is only one. You remember our word for today is one. There's only one that ultimately can fulfill that role, and his name is Jesus. And we go to the vine, the part that we read, and the fact that the vine was fruitful and was doing great until all these other things came in and tore it apart and made the fruit die. But if you remember John chapter 15, I can't even recall how many times we've referenced John 15 over the past several weeks. Jesus is the true vine. So now we have Jesus is the Lion of the tribe of Judah, and we have that Jesus is the true vine. So what does that tell us today? That tells us that no matter what we are trying to do, no matter what we are trying to accomplish, no matter who we believe has all the power, and no matter who in power believes that they have all of the power, they only have what God is allowing them to have, right? The government still rests on his shoulders. He can still, they make their plans. I always laugh at just to think that, man makes his plans and God laughs. But the thing is that no matter what we're trying to do, no matter what we're trying to accomplish, no matter who we think is in charge, or no matter who thinks that they're in charge and that they're making all the decisions, there's only one God who's in control. We don't have a bunch of little gods that we go and worship. Yes, there are those out there who worship little gods and worship all these things. But here's the point. All those things will fail. See, those who worship money will fail you. Right? When the money quits coming in, right? A lot of this pandemic, a lot of people have been without money. Some are getting more now than they've had before. And it's becoming more of an idol now than it was before. There's some who idolize their jobs and now they're without a job. So they've lost their identity because their idol is crumbling in front of their face. There's some who idolize material possessions. And if they can't have that, if that starts falling, if they start going and losing these things, or these things start falling apart, all of a sudden they've lost their identity. See, no matter what idol you put there, no matter what thing it is that you're worshiping instead of God, it's going to fail you. There's still only one God who's in charge. There's only one Lion of the tribe of Judah. There's only one true vine, and his name is Jesus. And so no matter what we're trying to do, no matter what we're trying to accomplish, and no matter who believes that they have all the power, God is the one. Jesus Christ is the only one who is faithful. He's the only one who is able to do all that he said. He's the only one that will do all that he said. No empty promises with him. And he's the only one who's going to see us through to the end. He's the only one that's going to be with you every step of the way, if you'll just trust him. Don't trust in what you see and all the turmoil and chaos that's going on. Trust in the one who we can't physically see. Trust in the one that you feel moving in your life, giving you that peace that passes all understanding, even in the midst of the storm. Look to the only one that you need. His name is Jesus Christ. God bless you, and I pray that you have a great, great day.